Welcome to Audiorama Onda Lectora. Make yourself comfortable, listen, and enjoy this audiobook. The Habits That Change Your Life by Orison Swett Marden.
The Habits That Change Your Life. Orison Swett Marden. At the time, when glass windows began to be used, the poet Rogers suffered an intense cold, sitting with his back to what he thought it was an open window in the dining room. But it was actually glass. During the meal, he thought he was catching a cold, although he did not dare to ask for the window to be closed. We hardly realize how much influence suggestion has on our health. On many occasions, people have experienced serious illnesses as a result of negative comments about their appearance or unfounded suggestions that they were suffering from fatal diseases. Recently, a prominent New York businessman shared with me a story about an experiment conducted by friends of a strong young man. They agreed that, starting in the morning, each of them would tell him when he came to work that he did not look well, and ask him what the problem was. They were to do it in such a way as not to arouse suspicion, and to note the result at 1 o'clock. He was influenced by the suggestion in such a way that the vigorous young man went home, arguing that he was ill. In the hospitals of Paris, many interesting experiments have been made, with patients in hypnotic trance, by inflicting injuries on them by mental suggestion. For instance, while a cold poker was placed on their limbs, they were told that they were being embraced with a red-hot iron, and immediately, the flesh had the appearance of being badly burned. I have known patients who completely collapsed when they saw the surgical instruments in the operating room. I have heard them say that they could feel the cut of the knife long before they were anesthetized. Patients are often put to sleep by injecting a weak solution of salt and water in the arm, and making them believe that it is morphine. Any physician with great experience knows that it can relieve or produce pain simply by suggestion. Many doctors send their patients to some famous spa, not so much for the waters or the air, but for the miracle it produces, the complete change of thought. Even charlatans are able, by fanning the hopes of the sick, to produce wonderful cures. The mental attitude of the nurse has much to do with the recovery of a sick person. If she keeps up the constant suggestion that the patient will recover, and firmly affirms it, she will be a wonderful help in gathering his strength. If, on the contrary, she has the conviction that he is going to die, she will communicate her belief, and consequently, this will depress the patient. We are under the influence of suggestion at every moment of our conscious life. Everything we see, hear, and feel is a suggestion that produces the result corresponding to its own nature. Its subtle power seems to reach in effect the very impulses of life. The power of suggestion over minds often has an astonishing effect on those who are open to receive it. A discouraged invalid, who feels that life has robbed him of his opportunities, and who has suffered for years, is filled with excitement at the prospect of a new remedy which promises miracles. He is so expectant that he is willing to make any sacrifice in order to obtain such a remedy. And when he receives it, he is so receptive that he thinks it is the medicine in which he has done the magic. Faith in the physician is a powerful curative suggestion. Many patients, especially the ignorant, believe that the physician holds the keys to life and death. They have implicit confidence in him, that what he tells them has a powerful influence on them, for good or ill. The chances of the patient recovering through the suggestion of the healing power are tremendous. The physician will constantly assure his patient, often vehemently, that he is absolutely bound to recover. He will tell him that there is an omnipotent healing power within him, and that an indication of it is to be found in the power that heals a wound and refreshes, renews, and recreates him during sleep. It is almost impossible for a patient to recover if people constantly remind him how sick he is. His willpower, together with all his physical forces of recovery, could not counteract the effect of the reiteration of the sickly suggestion. Many sick rooms become a chamber of horrors because of the depressing suggestion that invades them. Instead of being full of sunshine, good cheer and encouragement, it is often darkened. God's beautiful sunshine is dull, ventilation is poor, and everyone has a sad and worried face. The medicine bottles and surgical appliances are strewn about. Everything is calculated to breed disease, instead of encouraging health and inspiring hope. There are enough depressing suggestions in such a place to make a perfectly healthy person sick. What people need is encouragement and hope. Their natural resilience needs to be strengthened and developed. Instead of telling a friend who is in despair or distress that you are sorry for him, you should try to bring him out of his despondency. Help him to awaken the restorative energies latent in him, project to him his God image, his better self, which, being part of the great immortal principle, is never sick, and never out of harmony. Correct suggestion will prevent a great majority of divorces. In numerous cases, infatuation has been overcome by means of suggestion. Many women have been cured of foolish love for impossible men, such as those who became infatuated with the husband of a friend. Heartbroken women have been completely recovered. They have been brought to see their better, finer, divine selves, through the power of suggestion. Suggestion that comes from a sweet, beautiful, charming character is contagious, and sometimes stirs up a whole neighborhood. We all know how the suggestion of heroic deeds or great achievements has awakened the ambitions and energies of others to do the same. Many lives have been changed by a meaningful conversation, by a little encouragement, or by the suggestion of an inspiring book. Many men, who have left their mark on history, who have improved civilization, succeeded, because their ambition was awakened by suggestion. Some book or some individual gave them the first glimpse of their possibilities, and enabled them to feel for the first time the power within them. The suggestion of inferiority is one of the most difficult to overcome. No one can calculate the damage it does to humanity, and the lives it shatters. I know men whose careers have been practically ruined by the constant insinuation, when they were children, that they would never amount to anything. This suggestion of inferiority made them so timid and unsure of themselves, that they have never been able to assert their individuality. I knew a college student, whose rank in his class entitled him to the highest recognition, but whose life was nearly ruined by that suggestion. He heard some of his classmates say that he had no more dignity than that of a goose, and that he always had a poor appearance. Under no circumstances would they ever think of choosing him as a class speaker, because he would make a lousy impression on the audience. He had uncommon ability, but his extreme shyness made him look awkward, and at times, even foolish. This he would undoubtedly have overcome, if he had not listened to the criticisms of his classmates. He thought that meant he was mentally inferior, and this belief limited him forever. God said, "What subtle power there is in the suggestion of the human voice, what emotions its different modulations awaken in us. We laugh and we cry, we are indignant and we take revenge. Our feelings jump from one extreme to another, according to the words charged with passion or love, which reach our ear. We are spellbound, with bated breath, in front of the great speaker, who plays with the emotions of his audience, like a musician plays the strings of his harp, bringing tears, smiles, pathos and indignation. The force of his words makes a wonderful impression. Many listeners respond to everything the voice suggests. It is a great betrayer of our feelings and emotions. It is tender when it conveys love to our friends, cold, selfish and without a hint of sympathy, during business transactions, when we try to get the best of a deal. Just as a soft voice attracts us, so a harsh voice repulses us. We all know how sensitive they are, even dogs and horses, to the different modulations of the human voice. They know the tone of affection, they are calm and responsive to it, but they are assailed by fear and trembling, at the anger of the master. Some natures are powerfully affected by certain musical chords. They immediately come out of the deepest depression and despondency, and enter into ecstasy. Nothing has touched them, simply, they have caught a sensation through the auditory nerve, which has awakened, and set in activity certain brain cells, and changed their whole mental attitude. Music exerts a decisive influence on blood pressure and breathing. We all know how it soothes, refreshes and rests us, when we are jaded and worried. When its sweet harmonies fill the soul, all worries, concerns and anxieties fly away. As George Eliot said, it expresses what some of us have often felt. No doubt, when we are under its spell, certain chords of music affect me strangely, to the point that I can never listen to them, without my mental attitude changing for a while. And if the effect lasted longer, I might be able to perform acts worthy of heroism. Latimer, Ridley and many others went to the stake really happy. The spectators were astonished to see the smiles that reflected an ineffable peace on their faces, while the fierce glow of the flames grew. As well as by the signs of praise and thanksgiving, which could be heard, amidst the roar of the crackling logs. "No, we don't get sick," said one actor, "because we can't get sick." Patty and some other stars could afford that luxury, but for most of us it is forbidden. It is a duty to us, and although there have been times, when I have stayed at home tucked up in bed, with the right to be sick like anyone else, I have not, and have overcome the attack by sheer necessity. It is no fiction, that willpower is the best of tonics, and people who do theater understand, that they should have a good supply of it always at hand. A tightrope walker was so ill with lumbago, that he could hardly move. But when his appearance was announced, he used all his willpower, and went through the ropes several times with a wheelbarrow, according to the program. When he finished, he bent, and they had to carry him to his bed. Somewhere, I read the story of a poor man who went to hang himself, but finding by chance a pot of money, he threw away the rope, and hurried home. The one who hid the gold, when he lost it, hanged himself with the rope the other man had left. Success is a great tonic, failure is a great depressant. The achievements that the heart longs for, as a rule, improve health and happiness. Generally, we find our treasure not only in our heart, but also in our health. Is there anyone who has not observed how men neglected in their health, perhaps even invalids, and men lacking in energy and determination, suddenly awaken to the discovery of unsuspected abilities, and experience unexpected health when they achieve some significant success? The same happens sometimes, with people who are not in good health, and who have been thrown suddenly, to positions of great responsibility, due to the death of their parents or relatives. Or who, having lost their property, have been forced to do what seemed impossible before. Education is a tonic for health. Delicate boys and girls, whom parents and friends considered too thin to bear the attention, often improve their health at school and college. All things being equal, intelligent, cultured and educated people enjoy the best health. For the same reason, there is a very intimate relationship between health and morals. A house divided against itself cannot be sustained. The excesses, the violation of chastity and vices of all kinds, are opposed to the welfare, because they tend to destroy the harmony of life. The body is but a servant of the mind, a well-balanced intellect, cultured and disciplined, which powerfully influences the physical, and tends to balance it. On the other hand, a weak, doubtful, one-sided, unstable and ignorant mind, will eventually put the body in the same condition. Every pure and edifying thought, every notable aspiration to good and truth, every yearning of the heart for a higher and better life, every lofty purpose and disinterested effort, reacts upon the body, makes it stronger, more harmonious and more beautiful. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. The body of every person is molded and shaped by thought. If a young woman wanted to make herself beautiful, she would not start by focusing on her ugliness, nor dwell on vices, as those ugly images would be reflected in her face and attitude. Nor would she try to be graceful by practicing dullness. We cannot attain health by contemplating disease, any more than we can attain perfection by dwelling on imperfection or harmony, through discord. We must keep in mind a high ideal of health and harmony, and we must combat every contrary thought, and every enemy of harmony, as we would combat the temptation to crime. Never affirm or repeat about your health what you do not wish to be true. Do not dwell on your ailments, nor study your symptoms. Never think that you are not completely master of yourself. Assert with determination the superiority over your system, and do not consider yourself a slave to an inferior power. The mind has an undoubted power, with which to preserve and maintain physical beauty in youth, to keep the body strong and healthy, to renew life and preserve it from decay, for many years to come. The longest-lived men and women have been, as a rule, those who have attained mental and moral development. They have lived in the highest place of life, beyond where much of the shocks, frictions and discords, weaken and shatter most lives. Music has been the cure of numerous nervous diseases, while in others it has succeeded in slowing down their progress, significantly. Anything, which keeps the mind away from our troubles, tends to restore harmony throughout the body. It is great to acquire the habit and reputation, to speak always good and never bad, to see good things and never bad, to encourage and never discourage, and to be always optimistic in everything. Send loving, hopeful and happy thoughts, and blessings will flow into your hands. Send hateful, impure and sad thoughts, and curses will rain down upon you, and fear and worry will wait upon your pillow. There is no principle more abused in the business world today than the law of suggestion. Everywhere in this country, we see the pathetic victims of those who make a business, through domination and control of the most impressionable minds. Thus suggestion is carried to the point of hypnotism, as illustrated by unscrupulous salesmen and promoters. If a person steals the property of another, he is imprisoned. However, no law can stop him, who hypnotizes the unsuspecting mind of his victim. Projecting his malicious thoughts, overcoming her objections, and leading her voluntarily, to acquire what she does not want and cannot afford, perhaps going into debt for years, to support her family. It would be better and should be considered less criminal, for a man to enter a house and steal articles of value. For it seems a lesser crime, to dominate the minds of the heads of poor families, and hypnotize them into signing contracts, over which they have no right and cannot fulfill. Lawyers usually charge large salaries, because of their wonderful personal magnetism, and their great power of persuasion. The time will come, when many of these persuaders, traveling the country, hypnotizing their subjects, and robbing them of their hard-earned money, will be considered criminals. On the other hand, suggestion is used for practical good in business life. In many companies, it is now a common practice, to put into the hands of their employees inspirational books, and special magazine articles, which are made to stimulate them to fresh effort. They are made to arouse them to greater action, and make them more ambitious, to do greater things. The schools of sales are making extensive use of the psychology of business, and are giving all kinds of illustrations, which will stimulate men to greater efficiency. The up-to-date merchant demonstrates his knowledge of the power of suggestion on the customers, by his fascinating exhibitions, and the display of his wares. The restaurateur knows the power of suggestion in delicious foods, and we often see tempting dishes and articles of food displayed in the restaurant, where the sense of sight will carry the magical suggestion to the brain. A person raised in luxury and privilege would be so affected by the dirt and clutter of a cheap Bowery restaurant that he would lose his appetite. However, if the same food cooked in the same way were moved to one of his fancy Broadway restaurants and served on luxurious china and immaculate table linen to mesmerizing music, then the situation would take a complete turn. The suggestion of the horrible suspicions of a whole nation so dominated Dreyfus during his trial that it completely neutralized his individuality, unbalancing his innocence. All his manners were those of a guilty person, so that many of his friends believed that he was guilty after the verdict. On one occasion, in front of a crowd gathered to watch him, they publicly stripped Dreyfus of his buttons, and other insignia of his military rank. His sword was snatched and broken, and the people hissed, booed, and hurled all sorts of insults. No criminal could have exhibited more evidence of guilt. The irradiations of the guilty suggestion of millions of people completely dominated his own mentality and individuality. And although he was absolutely innocent, his appearance and manners gave every evidence of treason of which he was accused. There is no suggestion so fatal, so insinuating, as that of impurity. A great many people have been victims of this subtle and deadly poison. Who can describe the tragedies which have been caused by immoral and impure suggestions, transmitted to minds that were absolutely pure, that had never been contaminated before? The subtle poisoning, infused through the system, makes the entrance of successive suggestions easier and easier, until finally the whole moral system is saturated with the poison. There is a fascinating example of the power of suggestion in the experience of what is called stigmatism. A group of nuns, devoted for years to following in the footsteps of Christ's life, and to experiencing his suffering, concentrated their energies on the suffering of Christ, vividly imagining the wounds he suffered. The intensity of their thoughts came to change the chemical and physical structure of the tissues, generating identical marks to those of the nails in the hands and feet, as well as the wound of the spear in the side, just like those of the crucified Christ. These nuns dedicated their lives to reproduce the physical evidence of the crucifixion. The fixation of the mind, over a long period of time on the wounds of the hands, feet, and side, was so vivid, so concentrated, that the image became real in their own flesh. In addition to the mental image, they also had constantly before them the physical image of Christ crucified, which made their mental image even more real. The religious ecstasy was so intense that they could actually see Christ crucified. The curse of worry, this monster, haunts us from the cradle to the grave. It arrives unannounced, at wedding and funeral alike. It is at every reception, at every banquet, it occupies a seat at every table. No human intellect can estimate the untold havoc and ruin it causes. Worry has always compelled wit to be mediocre, has caused more failures, more broken hearts and more despair, than any other cause in the world. Have you ever heard that worry, has it ever benefited the human being? Did it ever help anyone to improve his condition? Does it always everywhere do just the opposite, impairing health, depleting vitality, diminishing efficiency? What have men not done under the pressure of worry? They have plunged into all sorts of vices, they have become alcoholics, drug addicts, they have come their own souls, for trying to escape this monster. Think of the homes it has broken, the ambitions, hopes and prospects it has ruined. Think of the victims of this demon, if it exists. We should not be worried, for all the negative consequences it could have. However, despite all the tragedies that follows in its wake, a visitor from another world would have the impression that worry is one of our friends, dearest and most helpful. For we tend to embrace and refuse to part from it. Is it not inexplicable that people who know perfectly well that success and happiness depend upon getting the most possible out of their energies, harbor in their minds the enemy of this very success and happiness? Is it not strange that they should form this habit of anticipating evils, which will probably never come, when they know that anxiety and restlessness will not only rob them of peace of mind, strength and ability to do their work, but also of their valuable years of life? No man can use the power that dissipates his nervous energy in a useless anxiety. Nothing will more affect one's vitality, and spoil his ambition or detract from his power in the world, than worry. Work kills no one, but worry has killed multitudes. It is not the actions themselves that harm us, but the fear of carrying them out. It is not just mentally repeating over and over again what to do, but anticipating something unpleasant in the process of execution. Many of us, we face unpleasant tasks in a similar way, as an athlete who starts his race from such a far distance. When he finally reaches the target point, he finds that he is too exhausted to jump the ditch or the stream, which will test his agility. Worry not only affects vitality and wastes energy, but also seriously affects the quality of work and reduces the productive capacity. A man cannot obtain the highest quality of efficiency in his work if he is worried. The mental faculties must be free before they can give their best. A disturbed brain cannot think clearly, vigorously, and logically. Attention cannot be concentrated with the same force when the brain cells are poisoned by anxiety, as when they are fed by pure blood, and are clean and clear. According to Professor Elmer Gates and other notable scientists, who have shown that harmful emotions cause actual chemical changes in the secretions, and generate harmful substances in the body, which are fatal to healthy growth and action. One of the worst forms of worry is dwelling on failure. It dulls ambition, dampens purpose, and frustrates goals. Some people have a bad habit of dwelling on their past lives, punishing themselves for their mistakes, until they only look backward, instead of forward, and see everything in a distorted light. These people only look at the shadow side. The longer the image that has caused the problem remains in the mind, the more deeply it is embedded in it, and the more difficult it is to remove. We are not convinced that a power beyond our control directs the universe, that every moment of worry subtracts capital from our success, and makes our failure more likely. That every bit of anxiety and worry leaves its mark on the body, interrupts our physical and mental well-being, and paralyzes efficiency, and that this condition hinders our performance. No wonder people allow petty worries and insignificant annoyances to wear their lives down at such a frightening pace that they face old age prematurely in middle age. Look at the women who are withered, worn out and aged, in their early 30s. Not because of the hard work they have done, or the troubles they have had, but because of habitual worry, which has helped no one, but has brought discord and unhappiness to their homes. Somewhere, I was reading about a worried woman, who made a list of possible unfortunate events, which she was sure would occur, and would be disastrous to her happiness and well-being. The list was lost, and to her astonishment, when she retrieved it much later, she discovered that not a single one of the unfortunate predictions in that catalogue of disasters had come true. This experience is a good suggestion for those who tend to worry too much. Write down everything you think might go wrong, and then put the list aside. You will be surprised how small a percentage of sad things actually happen. It is pitiful to see strong men and women, who have inherited divine qualities, and who bear his imprint, with faces full of all kinds of fears and uncertainties. Worried about yesterday, today, the future, about everything they can imagine. Fear runs like a tortuous thread, through the whole web of life, from beginning to end, says Dr. Holcomb. If we develop in the womb, in an unfavorable environment full of fear and uncertainty, for weeks before we are born, then we are likely to fear our parents, teachers, playmates, ghosts, rules and punishments, doctors, dentists and surgeons. Our adult life becomes a state of chronic anxiety, which is fear in a milder form. We are afraid to fail in business, fear of disappointments and mistakes, fear of overt or covert enemies, fear of poverty. To public opinion, to accidents, to sickness, to death, and to unhappiness after death. Man is like a bewitched animal, from the cradle to the grave, victim of real or imaginary fears. Not only of his own, but those reflected in him from superstitions, self-deceptions, sensory illusions, false beliefs and concrete mistakes, of the entire human race past and present. Most of us, we are children afraid of our shadows, so handicapped, that we cannot be effective in our life's work. A man full of fear, is not a real man, he is a puppet, a dummy, an imitation of a man. Stop fearing things that may never happen, just as you would leave that which has caused you suffering. Fill your mind with courage, hope and confidence. Do not wait for fear to settle in your mind and imagination, do not stop for them, apply the antidote instantly, and the enemies will flee. There is no fear so great or so deep in the mind that it cannot be neutralized or completely eradicated by its opposite. The opposite suggestion will kill it. On one occasion, Dr. Chalmers was traveling in a horse-drawn carriage along with the driver, and noticed that John kept striking the stagecoach master with his whip. When he asked him why he was doing it, John replied, "Far away there is a white stone, and the boss is afraid of that stone. So, with the crack of my whip and the pain in his legs, I want to distract him." Dr. Chalmers went home, elaborated on the idea, and wrote, "The expulsive power of a new affection." You must expel fear by introducing a new idea to the mind. Fear, in any of its expressions, such as worry or anxiety, cannot live for a moment in your mind, in the presence of the opposite thought, courage, hope, security, and self-confidence. Fear is an awareness of weakness, and is only possible when you doubt your ability to face what you fear. Fear of disease comes from the awareness that you will not be able to fight it successfully. During an epidemic of a dreaded contagious disease, particularly susceptible and fearful people panic. This happens when they hear other people discussing the subject everywhere, as well as when they see the vivid pictures, which appear in the newspapers. Their minds, as in the case of yellow fever, are filled with images of the disease, its symptoms, death, mourning and funerals. If you never achieve anything else in life, get rid of worries. There is no greater enemy of well-being than to be anxious and worried. Don't flies affect a nervous horse more than his work? It is not the little nags, the constant touches with the whip or the tugging on the reins that worry him more than the work of pulling the carriage. It is the little pricks, the little annoyances of our daily life, which spoil our comfort and happiness, and rob us of more energy than the big problems, which we face. It is the constant nagging, and the reproaches of an irritable man or woman, that spoil all the peace and happiness of many a home. The most deplorable waste of energy in human life is due to the bad habit of anticipating evil, of fearing what the future holds. And in no case, fear or concern can be justified by the situation, because it is always imaginary, totally unfounded and baseless. What we have is something that has not yet happened, it does not exist, therefore, it is not a reality. If you really suffer from a disease that you fear, fear only aggravates all the symptoms of your disease, and makes a sad outcome more likely. Fear shortens life, because it impairs all physiological processes. Its power is demonstrated by the fact that it actually changes the chemical composition of all the secretions of the body. Victims of fear not only age faster, but also die prematurely. All the work done, when you have fear or a bad feeling, has little effectiveness. Fear strangles originality, boldness and daring. It kills individuality, weakening all mental processes. Great feats are never accomplished when fear hovers over imminent danger. Fear always indicates weakness, and the presence of cowardice. What a destroyer of years, what a spoiler of happiness and ambitions, what a ravager of careers, has this monster always been. The Bible says, "A broken spirit dries up the bones." It is well known that mental depression, melancholy, slows down the glandular secretions of the body, and literally dries up the tissues. Fear depresses normal mental action, and renders one incapable, in an emergency, of acting wisely, for no one can think clearly and act judiciously, when paralyzed by fear. When a man is very melancholy and unmotivated, when he is filled with fear of failure, and is haunted by the specter of poverty and a suffering family. Before he knows it, he attracts the very thing he fears, and prosperity is crushed out of his business. But first it is a mental failure. If instead of surrendering to fear, a man would persist in remaining prosperous, assume an attitude of hope and optimism, and conduct his business in a systematic, economical, and far-sighted manner, then actual failure would be comparatively rare. However, when a man loses heart and control, becomes panic-stricken and a victim of worry, he is not in a position to make the necessary effort to achieve victory. There is not a single positive trait in worry, nor in any of its forms. It is always everywhere, a complete and total curse. Despite the fact that fear has no basis, neither in reality nor in truth, we see many people everywhere, who are slaves to this imaginary creature. Take a pleasant thought to bed with you at the end of your workday. Stop your work-related thoughts, and stop worrying about it. Mentally close your business at the end of working hours, either in the office or in the factory, and avoid dragging it home with you, so as not to ruin your evening or disturb your sleep. You cannot allow that which disturbs your peace and happiness, is engraved more and more deeply, in your consciousness. Many people go to sleep, just as camels go to bed in the desert, with their bundles still on their backs. They don't seem to know how to get rid of their worries, and continue to work mentally, all night long. If you are inclined to worry during the night, and keep your mental faculties strained, it will be a good plan to have a bow in your bedroom, and unstring it every night. Thus you will remember, that you must also clear your mind, in order to keep its elasticity, and not lose your temper. If a man works hard all day, and exhausts his mind all night, when he wakes up in the morning, he will feel tired and jaded. Instead of having a clear and vigorous brain, capable of focusing his mind with power, he will face his work with low standards. He will have as little chance of success as a racehorse which has been driven all night before a race. Not even a man of Napoleon's will could win under such conditions. It is of great importance to rest our brains during the night, and to avoid wasting our valuable vitality. Many people become slaves of nightly worry, acquire a chronic habit, to continue thinking after retiring, especially to contemplate their problems. This becomes a very difficult habit to break. It is fundamental for good health, to have as a rule never to talk at night, about work problems, and things that bother and irritate us, especially just before going to bed. Because what dominates the mind when one falls asleep, continues to influence the nervous structure while we sleep. Some people age more during the night than during the day, which is paradoxical, because they should be more concerned during the day. When they work hard during the day, they do not have much time left to think about their ailments, work issues, or misfortunes. However, when they retire, all the disturbing thoughts and worries fill their mind with horrors. This causes premature aging, instead of rejuvenation, as would happen under the influence of a deep and restful sleep. Mental discord impairs vitality, diminishes courage, and shortens life. It is not worthwhile to indulge in a violent temper, in aggressive thoughts, in mental discord, in any of its forms. Life is too short, too precious to spend a part of it, in such useless affairs, which only destroy the soul and health. The imagination is particularly active at night, and all unpleasant things seem much worse than during the day, because in the silence and darkness, the imagination magnifies everything. On more than one occasion, we have all experienced dreams, after going to sleep. Perhaps we remember the refrain of a song, or relive an intense scene from a play. This highlights the powerful influence of our impressions, and underscores the importance of not retiring to rest in a bad mood or with unpleasant feelings. Our mind is so sensitive to these emotions that they can influence the quality of our night's rest and how we feel when we wake up. We must put ourselves in mental harmony, serenity, and calm before retiring, and if possible, go to bed smiling, no matter how hard it is to do so. Never retire with a frown, with a puzzled, worried, or humiliated expression. Smooth out wrinkles, chase away all enemies of your peace of mind, and never allow yourself to go to sleep with critical, cruel, or jealous thoughts about anyone. It is bad enough to feel hostile towards others when you are under strong provocation or in a bad mood. But certainly, you cannot afford to deliberately continue in this mood after the provocation has ceased. The wear and tear on your nervous system and your health is excessive. Be at peace with everyone, at least once a day. You cannot allow the enemies of your happiness and your vitality to further exert their miserable influences on your life and your character while you sleep. Many of us, moody, choleric and impulsive character, sometimes find it very difficult to be decent in our dealings with others. But we can at least, when we are alone and away from people who annoy and antagonize us, forget the hurts, and stop harboring unpleasant thoughts and harsh feelings towards others. It is a great habit to forget and forgive before going to sleep, to clear the mind of all enemies, of happiness and success. If during the day we have been impulsive, foolish or mean in our dealings with others, or if we have maintained a vindictive and jealous attitude towards others, then it is a good time to start again. It is a blessing to put into practice the exhortation of St. Paul to the Ephesians, "Let not the sun go down on your anger." If you want to wake up feeling refreshed and renewed, you should simply retire in a happy, understanding and cheerful mood. If you go to sleep in a bad mood, worried or depressed, you will wake up tired, exhausted and without elasticity or motivation. People poisoned by worry and bad mood are unable to refresh the brain. If you have a grudge against someone, forget it, erase it completely, and replace it with a thought of charitable love, with a kind thought before going to sleep. If you make it a habit every night to cleanse your mind of your enemies, to expel them before you go to sleep, your sleep will not be disturbed by horrible nightmares, and you will wake up refreshed. Cleanse your mental house before retiring, cast out all that causes you pain, all that is unpleasant and undesirable. All unpleasant thoughts of anger, hatred, jealousy and all selfish, uncharitable thoughts. Do not allow them to imprint their horrible images in your mind. And when you have got rid of all the garbage, and have swept, dusted and adorned your mind, fill it with pleasant, sweet, happy, helpful, encouraging and uplifting images. A bath of happiness in the evening should be the custom in every home. A bath of love and a good will towards every living creature is more important than a bath of water. We should go to sleep as cheerful and happy as possible. Our minds should be filled with high thoughts, thoughts of love and help, thoughts that will continue to create that which is useful and uplifting, which will renew the soul and help us to wake up in the morning with good disposition and in excellent conditions for the work of the day. If you have any difficulty to banish unpleasant thoughts, force yourself to read some good and inspiring book, something that puts you in a good mood. Something that will make you see the true greatness and beauty of life, something that will make you feel ashamed of pettiness and uncharitable thoughts. After a little practice, you will be surprised to see how quickly you can change your mental attitude to face life in the right way before you fall asleep. You will also be surprised to discover how wonderfully serene, calm, refreshed and rejuvenated you will be when you wake up in the morning. As well as how easy it will be for you to get off to a good start, and wear a smile, which will not fade during the day, unlike when you went to bed worried, or in a bad mood. Unless you harmonize your mind to sleep, the nervous system will be subjected to constant attention. Even if you manage to fall asleep with an agitated mind, the brain is still working, and you will wake up exhausted. We should especially strive to erase from memory all the unfortunate experiences of the day, all domestic or professional problems and anxieties, in order to retire in a placid, peaceful and harmonious state of mind. Not only because of the need to get up, fresh and invigorated in the morning, but because the character and disposition are affected by the state of mind when we go to sleep. Mental discords not only prevent a sound sleep, but also leave in the blood poisonous residues, which come from chemical changes, and which in turn impair brain action. There are not few businessmen who suffer nocturnal torture, coming even to fear to retire, because of the long and tedious hours they spend awake. Financial problems, in particular, are magnified in the dark of night, and even the most optimistic suffer some degree of pessimism at such times. Businessmen should know how to turn off the brain when they do not use it. It would not occur to them to leave or close their factories at night without turning off the machinery. Why should they then try to go to sleep without turning off their mental energy? It is infinitely important for health to switch off this energy when it is not being used to produce something, when you finish your working day? Why let your valuable energy be wasted in worries? Why carry your affairs home, take them to bed with you, and waste your vital forces in useless thoughts? Why allow a great waste of mental energy and vital force? You must learn to switch off mentally when you stop working. Many men spend as much mental energy at night as they do during the day. Renew and rejuvenate yourself through play and recreation. Play as much as you work, have fun, and then you will have that invigorating sleep, which will give you lots of energy in a radiant spirit, which will make you eager to dive into the next day's work. No matter how tired or busy you are, or how late you retire, get into the habit of never going to sleep without erasing from your mind every unfortunate impression. Every unpleasant experience, every particle of envy, jealousy, and selfishness. Imagine that the words harmony, good cheer, and goodwill are written all over your room in letters of light. Those people who have learned to stay in balance with the world before retiring, without harboring thoughts of jealousy, hatred, envy, revenge, or ill will towards any human being. They are the ones who get more benefits from sleep and retain their youth longer. In addition, they are more effective than those who go over their unpleasant experiences and worry about their problems during the night. If you choose, as a habit, keep your mind in harmony and an attitude of goodwill when you retire, you will be surprised to feel fresher, younger, stronger, and more balanced than you could have imagined. I know people whose lives have been completely revolutionized by this experiment of preparing mentally before going to sleep. They used to retire in a bad mood, tired and discouraged by the unexpected, and by all sorts of worries and anxieties. They worried about their business, unfortunate conditions in their affairs and their mistakes, and discussed their misfortunes at night with their wives. Therefore, their minds were in an altered state when they fell asleep, and these melancholy and unpleasant images were more and more engraved in their minds. Then they would wake up tired, instead of feeling as everyone should, with fresh ambition and invigorated determination. Get in the habit of making a call to your great inner self before you retire. Leave the message of upliftment, improvement, and greatness that you long for and wish to realize, but don't know how. If you register this call towards something higher and nobler in your subconscious, making it your own, you will notice that it will act as a leaven, which works within you during the night. And after a while, all the building forces within you will help to unite to further your goal, to support you in realizing your vision. Before we go to sleep, we have wonderful opportunities with which to build health, success, and happiness. By preparing our mind, we can print, declare, and imagine with great intensity our ideals, visualizing with clarity who we want to be, and what we want to achieve. You will be amazed at how quickly that wonderful force of your subjective self will begin to shape the pattern you give it. In these great inner forces, creative and restorative, lies the great secret of life. Blessed is he who is able to find it. The conquest of poverty. No one can become prosperous as long as he expects to be poor. We tend to get what we expect, and to expect nothing is to get nothing. If every step you take is on the road to failure, how can you expect to reach the goal of success? Prosperity begins in the mind, and it is impossible as long as the mental attitude is hostile. It is fatal to work for one thing and expect another, because everything must first be created mentally, and is destined to follow its mental pattern. Most people do not face life in the right way, they neutralize much of their effort, because their mental attitude is not aligned with their endeavor. So while they are working for one thing, they are actually waiting for something else. They discourage and drive away the very thing they are pursuing by maintaining the wrong mental attitude toward it. They do not approach their work with that certainty of victory, which attracts and forces results, that determination and confidence, which knows no defeat. To have ambitions of wealth and yet always expect to be poor, to always doubt your ability to achieve what you long for, is like trying to reach the east by traveling to the west. There is no philosophy which will help a man to succeed when he is always doubting his ability to succeed, and thus attracts failure. The man who wants to succeed must think of success, must think higher, must think progressively, creatively, constructively and, above all, optimistically. You will go in the direction in which you look. If you look towards poverty, towards lack, you will go in that direction. If on the other hand, you turn around, and refuse to relate to poverty, to think about it, to live it or to recognize it, you will begin to move towards abundance. As long as you radiate doubt or discouragement, you will be a failure. If you want to get out of poverty, you must keep your mind in a productive and creative condition. To do this, you must have strong, joyful, and creative thoughts. You must visualize a new world before you can live in it. Those people who are depressed, immersed in a distorted world, believing that they have lost their chance forever, and that they will never be able to get up again. They are people who are unaware of the transforming power that lies in changing their way of thinking. By simply reversing their thinking, they could easily get a fresh start. If you want to attract good fortune, you must get rid of doubt. As long as it stands between you and your ambition, it will be a bar that will always cut you off. You must have faith. No man can make a fortune as long as he is convinced that he cannot. The "I can't" philosophy has ruined more careers than almost anything else. Confidence is the magic key, which unlocks the door of supply. I never met a successful man who was always bad-mouthing business. The habit of looking down, of bad-mouthing, is fatal to progress. The Creator has commanded every man to look up, not down. He made him to climb, not to crawl. There is no providence to keep a man in poverty, or in painful circumstances. The Creator did not put multitudes of people on this earth, to fight for a limited supply, as if he were not able to provide what all need. Everything that human beings desire, and strive for in this world, is good for them, and there is enough for everyone. For example, what we need most is food, and we haven't even mentioned how much food supply there is in the United States. The state of Texas could supply food, home and luxuries to all the men, women and children of that continent. As to clothing, there is material enough in the country to clothe all its inhabitants in purple and fine linen. We have not yet begun to touch the possibilities of our supplies of clothing and apparel. The same is true of all other necessaries and luxuries. We are still on the outer surface of plenty, a surface that covers real supplies for every individual. When the whaling ships from New Bedford Harbor and other ports were languishing in idleness, because the whale was becoming extinct, we were not alarmed lest we should dwell in obscurity. But the oil wells came to our rescue with abundant supplies. And then, when we began to doubt that this source would last, science gave us electric light. There is building material enough to give every person a finer mansion than anyone who owns a Vanderbilt or a Roth. It was intended that we should all be rich and happy, that we should have abundance in all good things that the heart can desire. We should live conscious that there is an abundance of power from whence our present power comes, and that we can draw upon this great source as often as we can use. Something is wrong when the children of the King of Kings are like sheep cornered by a pack of wolves. Something is wrong when those who have inherited an infinite provision, worry about their daily bread, are so beset by fear and anxiety that they can have no peace. That their lives are a battle against want, that they are always under worry, always anxious. Something is wrong when people are so preoccupied and absorbed in earning a living that they can't earn a living. We are made to be happy, to express joy and happiness, to be prosperous. The problem with us is that we do not trust the law of infinite supply, but we close our nature, so that abundance cannot flow to us. In other words, we do not obey the law of attraction. We keep our minds so tight, and our faith in ourselves so small, that we hinder the inflow of abundance. Abundance follows a law as strict as the law of mathematics. If we obey it, we receive the flow, but if we don't, then we cut it off. The problem is not in the supply. There is abundance waiting for everyone on the planet. Prosperity begins in the mind, and it is impossible with a hostile mental attitude. We cannot attract abundance with an attitude of poverty, which pushes away what we long for. It is fatal to work for one thing and expect another, no matter how much one longs for prosperity. A miserable, poverty-stricken mental attitude will close all paths to it. The fabric of the web is destined to follow the pattern. Abundance and prosperity cannot come through the channels of poverty and failure thinking. They must first be created mentally. We must think prosperity, before we can get to it. How many take for granted that in this world, there are many good things for others? Comforts, luxuries, nice things, good clothes, travel opportunities, leisure, but not for them. They convince themselves that these things do not belong to them, but are for those of a very different class. But why are you in another class? Simply, why do you think you are in another class? Do you think you are inferior because you set limits for yourself, put barriers between you and abundance, cut off abundance and make the law of supply not work for you, closing your mind to it? And by what law can you expect to get what you think you cannot get? By what philosophy can you have the good things of the world, when you are utterly convinced that they are not for you? One of the greatest curses of the world is to believe in the necessity of poverty. Most people have a strong conviction that some must necessarily be poor, that they were made to be poor. But in the Creator's plan for man, there was no poverty, no need, no want. There need not be a poor person on the planet. The earth is full of resources, which we have barely touched. We have been poor in the midst of abundance, simply because of our own limiting thoughts. We are discovering that thoughts are things that are incorporated into life, and are part of character. And if we harbor the thought of fear, lack, if we are afraid of poverty, of need, then we make this thought of poverty, it becomes incorporated into the skin of life, and makes us the magnet, to attract more poverty like it. It was not intended, that we should find it so hard to earn a living, that we should scrape by, gather a few comforts, and spend almost all our time, earning a living rather than living it. The abundant, full, free, beautiful life was meant for us. Let us put a new image, a new ideal of abundance. We have not worshipped the God of poverty, of need, for too long. Let us hold the thought that God is our great supply. And that if we can keep in tune, and in close contact with Him, the great source of all supply, abundance will flow to us, and we will never again know lack. There is nothing which the human race lacks so much as an unquestioning and implicit trust in the divine source of all supply. We should be in the same relation with the infinite source as the child with its parents. The child does not say, "I dare not eat this food, for fear that I will not be given any more." He takes everything with absolute trust and confidence, that all his needs will be supplied, that there is much more where these things came from. In general, we do not have a positive opinion of our capabilities and abilities, and we do not expect the best of ourselves. We do not demand enough of ourselves, which leads to scarcity, and lack of abundance in our lives. We must demand enough, and not be content with too little, of what is worthwhile. It was intended that we should live an abundant life, that we should have in abundance all that is good for us. No one should live in poverty and misery. The lack of all that is desirable is not natural in the construction of any human being. Erase from your mind all shadows, all doubts and fears, and suggestions of poverty and failure. When you have become master of your thoughts, when you have learned to master your mind, you will see that things will begin to go well for you. Discouragement, fear, doubt, lack of self-confidence, are the germs that have killed the prosperity and happiness of thousands of people. Every man must play the role of being rich. If you are trying to be a successful man, you must play the part. If you are trying to demonstrate wealth, you must play it grandly. You must feel and look abundant, you must think abundant. Your bearing must be full of confidence. You must give the impression that you are a confident person, that you are capable enough to play your role. Suppose the best actor was written a play, in which the main role will represent a man who makes fortune, a great character, vigorous and persevering, which will conquer everyone just by his presence. Suppose that this actor, when playing the role, dressed like a man not very prosperous, walk across the stage hunched, as if he had no vision, no energy, or life. As if he had no real faith that he could ever make money or succeed in business. Suppose he walked across the stage with an apologetic attitude, timid, overwhelmed, as if to say, I don't think I can ever be this thing I've tried. It's too big for me. Other people have done it, but I never thought I would become rich or prosperous. Somehow, good things don't seem to be destined for me. I am an ordinary man, and I don't have much experience or self-confidence. And it seems presumptuous to think that I will ever be rich, or that I will have much influence in the world. What impression would it make on the public? Would it give confidence, radiate power or forcefulness? Would it make people think that this kind of weakling could create a fortune, could create conditions to produce money? Wouldn't everyone say that this man is a failure? Wouldn't they laugh at the idea that he could conquer anything? Poverty itself is not as bad as the thought of poverty. It is the conviction that we are poor and must remain so. What is fatal, what is destructive, is the mental attitude we adopt towards poverty. If we are satisfied with it, and we resign ourselves without fighting to get out of this situation, with a firmness and determination that does not admit any retreat, then we are putting at risk our future and our welfare. If we can conquer inner poverty, we will soon be able to conquer the poverty of external things, because when we change our mental attitude, so does the physical. Keeping the thought of poverty keeps us in contact with conditions of poverty, which in the end produce it. And constantly having this thought, and talking about poverty mentally, makes us poor. We cannot travel towards prosperity, until the mental attitude, face prosperity. As long as we continue to look towards despair, we will never reach the harbor of delight. The man who remains in a poor mental attitude, or who always thinks of his bad luck and failure, which prevent him from getting ahead. Such a man can in no way go in the opposite direction, where prosperity lies. There are many poor people in this country, who are half satisfied to remain in that condition, and who have ceased to struggle to get out of it. They may work hard, but they have lost the hope, the longing, to achieve independence. Many people stay poor because they fear poverty, being carried away by the possibility of becoming destitute, of not having enough to live on. When you commit yourself to put an end to poverty once and for all, when you decide to dissociate yourself completely from it, and erase any vestige of its existence in your clothing, personal appearance, manners, way of speaking, actions and home. When you project your true temperament to the world, and renounce to be a failure, encouraging all of you towards better things, towards competence and independence. And when nothing on earth can divert you from that determination, you will be surprised to find that motivation, increased confidence, security, and respect will begin to flow to you. Decide with all the strength you can muster that since there is so much good in the world for everyone, you will get your share without harming anyone or holding others back. It was predestined that you would have competition, for abundance is your birthright. You are prepared for success and built for happiness, so you must strive to achieve your divine destiny.
Thank you for joining us on this transformative journey through the power of habits. Remember, every small change you make today can lead to a brighter tomorrow. Keep embracing positivity, stay committed to your growth, and never underestimate the impact of your habits on your life. Farewell, and may your path be filled with abundance, joy, and fulfillment.